I was lying on the floor, my chest burning with pain, and he didn't even look back, just grabbed his jacket and walked toward the door. Archer never turned around. 7 years. 7 years I thought he was my life, my home, my everything. And today he left me like I was broken furniture that had outlived its usefulness. My hand was still pressed against the spot where he shoved me. I'd crashed into the corner of the wall and my lower back felt like a blade had been driven through it. But he didn't care. All he said was those words that would echo in my head forever. You were never enough, Caleb. I stayed out of pity. Pity. I was his charity case. Hearing that made my chest feel hollow, like someone had ripped everything out and tossed it aside. I tried to push myself up, but my left ankle had twisted during the fall, and every time I put weight on it, it felt like the bone had shattered. I couldn't even make it to the bathroom. My phone had fallen under the couch too far away. Way too far. My vision started to blur and I closed my eyes. Maybe I'd just sleep. Maybe this was all a nightmare. But then I heard it knock knock. Soft. Uncertain. I thought maybe Archer had come back. Maybe he'd found the courage to apologize. But when I somehow managed to drag myself to the door and open it, there stood a stranger. Long hair tied back loosely, a bit of rough stubble on his jaw, glasses that made him look like he belonged in a library. He extended his hand toward me and said, "I'm Miles. I live next door. I heard something fall. Are you okay?" I was about to collapse again. He caught me. His grip was firm but gentle at the same time, like someone had actually seen me for the first time in years. He helped me to the sofa and said, "Stay still. I'm getting ice." I just stared. Who was this person? And why did he care? He came back quickly, holding a makeshift ice pack wrapped in a kitchen towel. He knelt beside me and carefully placed it on my swollen ankle. I winced, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he adjusted the angle, making sure it wasn't pressing too hard. His movements were precise, almost practiced, like he understood pain and knew exactly how to ease it. "You really should go to the hospital," he said, looking up at me with concern in his eyes. "This doesn't look good." I shook my head. "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. Every part of me was screaming that I was broken beyond repair. He went quiet, but he didn't leave. He just stayed there, silent, steady, present. It was strange. Archer never sat with me like this. He was always busy or bored, or annoyed with me. But Miles, he was just there, with me. After a while he reached over and placed a box of tissues on the coffee table next to me. That's when I realized I was crying quietly without making a sound. Miles didn't say anything about it. He just left the tissues there and plugged my phone into the charger on the side table. Then he stood up and said, "I'll be next door. Knock if you need anything." I wanted to ask him, "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." But the words wouldn't come. He looked at me one more time, gave a small reassuring smile and walked out. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying Archer's final words. But in between those moments I kept hearing Miles's voice. "I'm getting ice." Such a simple sentence, but it made me feel like someone had actually reached out a hand to me. The hours dragged on painfully. I kept shifting positions on the couch, trying to find one that didn't make my back scream. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Archer's face, cold, indifferent, cruel. I saw the way he'd stepped over me like I was trash. I saw the 7 years of my life dissolving into nothing. Around 3 in the morning, I finally gave up on sleep. I reached for my phone and scrolled through old photos. There we were, Archer and me at the beach, at restaurants, at friends' parties. In every single photo I was smiling, but looking at them now, I realized something horrifying. He was never really looking at me. His eyes were always somewhere else. On his phone, on other people, anywhere but on me. How had I missed that? How had I convinced myself for 7 years that this was love? The next morning, I managed to limp to the bathroom, putting just a little weight on my injured foot. It hurt, but it was bearable. When I came back out, I noticed something taped to my door. A small note, "Left soup outside. Heat it up." I opened the door and sure enough, there was a container sitting on my doormat. Homemade chicken soup, still faintly warm. I brought it inside and took the first spoonful. The taste was simple, comforting. Exactly like someone had cared enough to make it. I told myself, he's just a stranger. Just being polite. Nothing more. But my heart was telling me something completely different. Something dangerous. Something that felt like the beginning of hope, and that terrified me more than anything else. Miles came by again the next evening, carrying a small pharmacy bag. He didn't ask permission. He just walked in like he'd already decided I needed help whether I admitted it or not. "I got you some pain relief gel and elastic bandages," he said, setting the bag on the counter. "The swelling should go down in a few days if you keep it elevated and iced." I sat on the couch, watching him move around my apartment like he'd been there 100 times before. It should have felt invasive, but it didn't. It felt safe. "You didn't have to do this," I said quietly. He glanced over at me, adjusting his glasses. "I know, but I wanted to." That stopped me. Nobody had said something like that to me in so long. Archer never wanted to do anything for me unless it benefited him. Every gesture came with a price, a complaint, or a reminder of how much I owed him. But Miles? He just did it. No strings attached. He sat down on the floor near the couch and carefully unwrapped the bandage. "This might feel tight," he warned, before gently wrapping my ankle in slow, methodical circles. His hands were steady, confident. I found myself watching him more than I probably should have. The way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way his fingers moved with precision, the way he checked my face every few seconds to see if I was in pain. "Where'd you learn to do this?" I asked, trying to distract myself from how close he was. "Used to volunteer at a community clinic," he said without looking up. "Before I went full-time freelance. Picked up a few things." He finished wrapping and secured the bandage with a small clip. "There. That should help." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it more than I'd meant anything in weeks. He stood up and washed his hands in my kitchen sink, drying them on a towel he'd brought with him. Then he opened my fridge and frowned. "You have nothing in here." "I haven't really felt like shopping." Clearly, he pulled out his phone and started typing. "I'm ordering groceries." "What do you actually eat?" I blinked. "You don't have to." "Caleb." He looked at me directly, and something in his gaze made me stop talking. "Let me help." So I did. I told him what I liked, what I usually kept stocked, and he added everything to a cart without hesitation. Within 20 minutes, he'd arranged a same-day delivery. Then he made tea. Not coffee but tea, because he said caffeine would keep me awake and I looked like I needed rest. He was right. I hadn't slept properly since Archer left. We sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. It wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that felt like understanding, like we didn't need to fill the space with meaningless words. Eventually he spoke. "You don't have to tell me what happened, but if you want to, I'm here." I stared into my mug. Part of me wanted to spill everything, the years of emotional neglect, the constant criticism, the way Archer made me feel like I was never good enough. But another part of me was terrified. What if Miles saw me the same way? What if he realized I was just as worthless as Archer said I was? "He left me," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "After 7 years." Said I meant nothing. Miles didn't react with pity or shock. He just nodded slowly, like he was absorbing the weight of my words. "That says more about him than it does about you." I looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "Anyone who can throw away 7 years and say something that cruel isn't someone who knows how to love. That's not your failure, it's his." Something inside me cracked. Not in a bad way, in the way a dam breaks and finally lets the water flow. I didn't cry, but I felt lighter. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the problem. Miles stayed until late, helping me set up a comfortable sleeping area on the couch, since I couldn't climb stairs yet. He brought pillows, arranged blankets, made sure my phone and water were within reach. Before he left, he paused at the door and turned back to look at me. "If you need anything, anything at all, just knock. I'm a light sleeper." And then he was gone. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying the entire evening. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. I felt something else, something I couldn't quite name yet. It was warm and terrifying at the same time. I reached for my phone and deleted every photo of Archer. Every single one. It took me an hour, but I did it. And when I was done, I felt like I could finally breathe again. Like I'd taken back a piece of myself that he'd stolen. I set my phone down and closed my eyes. This time, when sleep came, it was dreamless and quiet. 2 days passed, And Miles came by every single day, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to check on me. He never asked intrusive questions. Never judged. He just offered practical help, medicine reminders, fresh bandages, heating pads for my back. Every time I thanked him, he'd just say, "It's nothing." But to me, it was everything. After Archer left, I started seeing myself as a burden, like I didn't deserve to exist, let alone be cared for. But Miles treated me like I mattered, like I was important, valuable. One evening he found me on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, struggling to open my laptop. Without a word, he took the laptop from me and set up an adjustable stand, so I wouldn't have to hunch over. Then he looked at me and said, "You're stubborn." I laughed for the first time in days. "You noticed?" He smiled back. A small but genuine smile. "Yeah, I did." That moment felt significant. Even though it was tiny, it lodged itself in my chest like a warm ember, reminding me that life could still hold small, beautiful things. We ended up drinking coffee together, not in awkward silence, but in the kind of comfortable quiet that felt like companionship. I told him my full name, Caleb Jennings, and he told me his, Miles Hartley. He was a graphic designer, freelance, living alone, just like me. I didn't say it out loud, but I felt like this person had entered my life for a reason. Like the universe had broken me and then decided to send someone to help piece me back together. That night, after he left, I kept replaying his voice in my head. Calm, deep, safe. The next afternoon, Miles showed up with takeout. "You've been eating soup for 3 days," he said, unpacking containers of Thai food. "Time for something with actual flavor." I watched him set everything up on my coffee table. Plates, napkins, utensils. He'd thought of everything. We ate together, and for the first time in weeks, food actually tasted good. Not because it was expensive or fancy, but because I wasn't eating alone. "Can I ask you something?" I said, setting down my fork. "Sure. Why are you doing all this? You don't owe me anything." He paused, considering his answer carefully. "I don't know. Maybe because I know what it's like to feel invisible. And I saw you that night, hurt, alone, and I just couldn't walk away." His honesty hit me harder than I expected. "Have you ever been in a relationship like mine?" He nodded slowly. "Once. Different circumstances. But yeah. It took me a long time to realize that staying in something toxic doesn't make you loyal. It just makes you a prisoner." I absorbed his words, feeling them settle deep in my bones. "How did you get out?" I decided I was worth more than what they were giving me. It wasn't easy. Some days I still doubt myself, but I'm better now than I was then. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared pain hanging between us. But it didn't feel heavy. It felt like Later that evening, Miles helped me move to the armchair by the window so I could get some fresh air. He opened the window just a crack, letting in the cool breeze. "You should try walking a bit tomorrow," he suggested. "Just around the apartment. It'll help with the stiffness." "Will you be here?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked at me, something unreadable in his expression. "If you want me to be, I do." The next day, true to his word, Miles came over in the morning. He helped me stand, supporting my weight as I took slow, careful steps around the living room. It hurt, but it was manageable. And having him there, his hand steady on my arm, his voice calm and encouraging, made it easier. "You're doing great," he said as I made it to the kitchen and back. I sat down, slightly out of breath, but feeling accomplished. "Thanks to you." He shook his head. "No. This is all you, Caleb. I'm just here to make sure you don't fall." Something shifted in that moment. The way he said my name. The way he looked at me, not with pity but with something else. Something that made my heart beat faster. I didn't know what it was yet, but I wanted to find out. We spent the rest of the morning together. Miles worked on his laptop while I read a book I'd been neglecting for months. It was domestic and simple and completely ordinary, and that's what made it extraordinary. For years with Archer, every moment had been a performance. I was always trying to be enough, do enough, say the right thing. But with Miles, I could just exist. Around noon he made sandwiches. Nothing fancy, just turkey and cheese on wheat bread, but he cut mine into triangles because I'd mentioned once that it tasted better that way. Such a small detail. But he'd remembered. As we ate, he told me about a project he was working on, a logo redesign for a local coffee shop. His eyes lit up when he talked about his work, and I found myself mesmerized by the passion in his voice. Archer never talked about his job with enthusiasm. Everything was always a complaint or a burden. "What about you?" Miles asked. "What do you do?" "I work in marketing," I said. "Or I did. I've been on leave since." I trailed off, not wanting to finish the sentence. "Take the time you need," he said simply. "The world can wait." That night after he left, I sat by the window and watched the streetlights flicker on one by one. For the first time since Archer walked out, I felt something other than pain. I felt hope. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something new. Archer came back. I was standing in the kitchen, finally able to walk without limping, when I heard the knock. It was different from Miles's knock, aggressive, impatient. My stomach dropped before I even opened the door, and there he was, looking exactly like the man I'd spent 7 years loving and hating in equal measure. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, and there was no trace of that expensive cologne he always wore. He looked tired, broken even. But I felt nothing. No sympathy, no anger, just emptiness. "Caleb," he said, his voice rough. "I made a mistake. I was drunk that night. I didn't mean any of it." I stood there, my hand still on the doorknob, and stared at him. This was the moment I'd fantasized about for days after he left. Him coming back, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. But now that it was actually happening, I realized how hollow it all was. He didn't look sorry, he looked desperate. "You need to leave," I said quietly. His eyes widened. "What?" "No, wait. Caleb, please. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We've been together for 7 years. That has to mean something." It did mean something, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "But you made it clear that night exactly what it meant to you." "Nothing." He took a step forward and I instinctively stepped back. "I was angry," he said, his tone shifting from desperate to defensive. "You were always so needy, always wanting attention." I just snapped. "But I came back, didn't I? That has to count for something." And there it was. The real Archer. The one who twisted everything to make it my fault. The one who made me believe that wanting basic affection was somehow a character flaw. "No," I said firmly. "It doesn't count for anything. You hurt me. You left me bleeding on the floor and didn't look back. And now you're standing here trying to blame me for your cruelty." His expression hardened. "You're going to regret this, Caleb. You think anyone else is going to want you? You're damaged goods." Before I could respond, I heard footsteps behind me. Miles appeared beside me, his presence solid and grounding. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, arms crossed, staring Archer down. "Who the hell is this?" Archer demanded, his voice rising. "Someone who actually knows how to treat people with respect," Miles said calmly. "And you need to leave. Now." Archer laughed bitterly. "Oh, I see. You already moved on. That was fast. Guess you weren't so heartbroken after all." I felt my chest tighten, but before I could defend myself, Miles stepped forward. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to hurt him and then come back and hurt him again. Leave." There was something in Miles's voice, quiet authority, that made Archer hesitate. He looked between us, his jaw clenched, and then spat out, "Fine. Enjoy your rebound. He'll get tired of you too." And then he was gone. I closed the door and leaned against it, my legs suddenly weak. Miles turned to me, concern etched across his face. "Are you okay?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure. "Thank you for being here." "I heard voices," he admitted. "I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I wanted to make sure you were safe." I looked at him, really looked at him. His hair was messy, like he'd just woken up. He was wearing a faded band t-shirt and sweatpants. He looked completely ordinary and completely perfect. "He called you my rebound," I said softly. Miles gave a small, sad smile. "Is that what I am?" I shook my head. "No. You're the person who showed me what kindness looks like. You're the person who reminded me that I'm worth something." He stepped closer and I could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You are worth something, Caleb. More than you know." We stood there in the hallway, the space between us charged with something unspoken. I wanted to say more, to tell him how much he'd changed everything in just a few days. But the words felt too big, too vulnerable. Instead, I asked, "Will you stay? Just for a little while?" Of course, he said without hesitation. We moved to the living room and Miles made hot chocolate, something I hadn't had in years. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the silence between us comfortable once again. Eventually he spoke. I meant what I said earlier. About him not knowing how to love. People like that, they take and take, until there's nothing left. And then they blame you for being empty. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. How do you know so much about this? He looked down at his own mug, his expression distant. Because I lived it. For 3 years, I was with someone who made me feel like I was never enough. Every accomplishment was minimized. Every mistake was magnified. I started believing that I deserved it. What changed? I asked. I hit rock bottom, he said simply. I had a panic attack at work and ended up in the emergency room. The doctor asked me if I was in a safe environment, and I realized I hadn't. I'd been so focused on making the relationship work that I forgot to take care of myself. I felt a pang of recognition. That was exactly what I'd done with Archer. I'd sacrificed my own well-being trying to be what he wanted, never realizing that nothing I did would ever be enough. How did you leave? I asked. I packed a bag one night while he was at work and never went back. Stayed with a friend for a few months until I could afford my own place. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it saved my life. I set my mug down and looked at him. I'm sorry you went through that. I'm not, he said, surprising me, because it taught me what I don't want, and it made me strong enough to recognize it in others. We talked for hours after that, about past relationships, about fears, about dreams we'd given up on. Miles told me about his passion for design, how he dropped out of a corporate job to pursue freelancing because it made him happy. I told him about my own work, how I used to love marketing but had grown to resent it because Archer constantly criticized my choices. Maybe it's time to fall in love with it again, Miles suggested, or find something new entirely. I don't even know what I want anymore, I admitted. That's okay, he said. You have time to figure it out. As the night wore on, I realized something profound. I felt more connected to Miles after a few days than I'd felt to Archer in 7 years. With Archer, I was always performing, always trying to be someone I wasn't. With Miles, I could just be myself, broken parts and all. Around midnight, Miles stood to leave. I should let you get some rest. I walked him to the door, suddenly reluctant to see him go. Miles? He turned back, waiting. Thank you. For everything. I don't know what I would have done without you. He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. You would have figured it out. You're stronger than you think, Caleb. After he left, I sat by the window and watched the city lights shimmer in the distance. Archer's words still echoed in my head. Damaged goods. But they didn't hurt as much anymore, because Miles had shown me a different truth. I wasn't damaged. I was healing. And there was a difference. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. For the first time in years, I started writing down things I wanted. Not things I thought I should want, but things that genuinely mattered to me. The list was short and messy and completely honest. To feel safe. To be seen. To laugh without fear. To love someone who loves me back. I looked at the last item and felt my heart skip. Was that what was happening here? Was I falling for Miles? The thought terrified me, but it also filled me with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. I put my phone away and climbed into bed. For the first time since Archer left, I didn't cry myself to sleep. Instead, I closed my eyes and thought about Miles's smile, his steady presence, the way he made me feel like I mattered. And for the first time in years, I let myself hope for something better. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of rain pattering against the window. It was the kind of gentle rain that made everything feel softer, quieter. I lay in bed for a while, listening to it, feeling strangely peaceful. My ankle was almost completely healed now, and the pain in my back had faded to a dull ache. Physically, I was getting better. Emotionally, I wasn't sure yet. Around 10, there was a knock at my door. I already knew who it was before I opened it. Miles stood there holding a bag from the bakery down the street. I brought breakfast, he said, shaking the rain from his hair. Hope you like croissants. I stepped aside to let him in, smiling despite myself. You didn't have to do that. I know, he said, setting the bag on the counter. But I wanted to. There was that phrase again. I wanted to. It was such a simple thing, but it meant everything. We sat at my small kitchen table, eating croissants and drinking coffee. The rain continued outside, creating a cocoon of sound around us. It felt intimate in a way I wasn't prepared for. "I've been thinking," Miles said, breaking the comfortable silence. "You've been cooped up in here for over a week. Want to get out for a bit?" I hesitated. "I don't know if I'm ready for that. Just a walk," he said gently. "Around the neighborhood. Fresh air might do you good." I thought about it. The idea of leaving the apartment felt overwhelming, but staying inside felt suffocating. Maybe Miles was right. Maybe I needed to take a step forward. "Okay," I said, "but just a short one." We finished breakfast and I changed into clean clothes, something I hadn't bothered with much lately. Miles waited patiently by the door, scrolling through his phone. When I emerged, he looked up and smiled. "Ready?" We stepped outside and the cool air hit my face. It felt like waking up. We walked slowly through the quiet streets, the rain having subsided to a light drizzle. Miles didn't rush me or fill the silence with unnecessary chatter. He just walked beside me, his presence steady and reassuring. We passed a small park and Miles gestured toward a bench under a large oak tree. "Want to sit for a minute?" I nodded, and we settled onto the damp bench. The park was empty except for a few birds hopping around, searching for worms in the wet grass. "Can I ask you something?" I said, watching the birds. "Always. Why did you help me that first night? You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything." Miles was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "Honestly, I saw myself in you. 3 years ago I was in a similar place, hurt, alone, convinced I didn't matter. I wish someone had been there for me the way I'm trying to be there for you." I turned to look at him. "You said you stayed with a friend after you left your ex. Did they help you the way you're helping me?" He shook his head. "Not really. They gave me a place to crash. But they didn't see me, you know? They were supportive in theory but uncomfortable with the reality of it. I ended up processing everything alone." "That sounds awful." "It was," he admitted. "But it taught me something important. Healing isn't just about time. It's about having someone who believes you're worth the effort." His words settled over me like a warm blanket. "Do you think I'm worth the effort?" He turned to face me fully, his eyes serious. "Caleb, I've never been more sure of anything." My breath caught. The way he was looking at me like I was something precious, something valuable, made my chest ache in the best way. "I don't understand you," I said softly. "You barely know me and yet you've done more for me in a week than Archer did in 7 years. Maybe that's because I see you," Miles said. "Not who you think you should be, or who someone else wants you to be. Just you." I didn't know what to say to that, so instead I did something I'd been wanting to do for days. I reached out and took his hand. His fingers were warm despite the cool air. He didn't pull away. Instead, he laced his fingers through mine and we sat there in the park, holding hands like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Is this okay?" I asked, suddenly nervous. "More than okay," he said quietly. We stayed like that for a while, watching the world wake up around us. Eventually, Miles spoke again. "I don't want to push you into anything you're not ready for. But I need you to know. I care about you, Caleb. More than I probably should for someone I just met." My heart was racing. "I care about you too. But I'm scared. What if I'm not ready? What if I mess this up? Then we'll figure it out together," he said simply. "There's no timeline here. No pressure. We can take this as slow as you need." I looked down at our joined hands. With Archer, everything had been rushed. Chaotic, intense from the beginning. He'd swept me off my feet and then spent 7 years making sure I never landed safely. But with Miles, everything felt different. Steady, safe, real. "I want this," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "I want to try. With you." Miles smiled, a genuine, beautiful smile that made my stomach flip. "Then we'll try. Together." We walked back to the apartment building, still holding hands. When we reached my door, Miles didn't immediately leave. Instead, he stood there, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing," he said. "I'm just happy. That's all." I laughed softly. "Me too." He leaned in then, slowly, giving me plenty of time to pull away. But I didn't want to. I wanted this. I wanted him. His lips brushed against my forehead, soft, gentle, respectful. It wasn't a passionate kiss, but it meant everything. It was a promise. A beginning. "I'll see you tomorrow?" he asked. "You'd better," I said, my voice coming out more breathless than I intended. After he left, I went inside and immediately called my best friend Jasmine for the first time since Archer had left. She picked up on the first ring. "Caleb, oh my God, where have you been? I've been worried sick." I filled her in on everything. The breakup, the injury, Miles. She listened without interrupting, which was rare for her. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Then so, let me get this straight. Your toxic ex finally left. And now you've got a hot, emotionally available neighbor who makes you soup and holds your hand?" I laughed. "I mean, when you put it like that. Caleb, honey, this is called an upgrade. A major one. I'm scared though," I admitted. "What if it's too soon? What if I'm just latching onto the first person who showed me kindness?" Or Jasmine said gently, "What if you're just recognizing what real care looks like because you finally experienced it? Don't sabotage something good because you're afraid. You deserve this." After we hung up, I sat on my couch and thought about her words. Did I deserve this? For so long Archer had convinced me that I didn't deserve love, respect, or kindness. But Miles was showing me something different. He was showing me that I was worth the effort. That night, I texted Miles, "Thank you for today. For everything." His response came quickly. "Thank you for trusting me." I fell asleep with my phone in my hand, a small smile on my face, and for the first time in years I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. 2 weeks had passed since that day in the park, and everything had shifted. Miles and I fell into a rhythm that felt effortless. He'd come over most evenings and we'd cook dinner together, watch movies, or just talk until late into the night. Sometimes we'd sit in comfortable silence, him working on design projects while I caught up on work emails. It was domestic and simple and absolutely perfect. But there was still a wall between us, one I'd built out of fear and self-protection. Miles never pushed, never pressured. He let me set the pace, which somehow made me want to tear that wall down even faster. Tonight we were in my kitchen making pasta from scratch. Miles had insisted we try it, claiming it was therapeutic. I was covered in flour, laughing as I tried to roll out the dough properly. "You're supposed to be gentle with it," Miles said, demonstrating with his own section of dough. "Like this." I watched his hands move, skilled and confident. "Show off." He grinned. "Jealous? Maybe." He moved behind me, placing his hands over mine, guiding my movements. "Here, feel the texture. When it's right, it'll feel silky, not sticky." I was acutely aware of how close he was. His chest against my back, his breath on my neck, his hands warm over mine. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could feel it. "Caleb?" he said softly. "Yeah? You okay?" I turned around and suddenly we were face to face. Barely any space between us. His eyes searched mine and I saw everything there. Patience, affection, want. "I'm more than okay," I whispered. He raised a hand, hesitating for just a moment before gently cupping my cheek. His thumb brushed against my skin, and I leaned into the touch without thinking. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice rough. "For real this time?" Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, exploring, but then something shifted. I pressed closer, my flour-covered hands gripping his shirt, and he responded by wrapping his arms around my waist, pulling me flush against him. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, more desperate. It felt like coming home and falling apart at the same time. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Miles rested his forehead against mine, his eyes still closed. "Wow," he breathed. I laughed shakily. "Yeah. Wow." He opened his eyes and looked at me with such raw emotion that it made my chest ache. "I've wanted to do that for so long." "Me too," I admitted. We stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, the pasta forgotten. Eventually, Miles pulled back slightly and smiled. "We should probably finish dinner." "Probably," I agreed. But neither of us moved. Finally, we forced ourselves to focus on cooking. The pasta turned out surprisingly good, though we both agreed it might have been more about the company than the food. We ate at the kitchen table, our knees touching underneath, stealing glances at each other like teenagers. After dinner, we moved to the couch. Miles pulled me close and I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling safer than I'd felt in years. Tell me something you've never told anyone, I said. He thought for a moment. I'm terrified of failing, not just at work but at life, at relationships. I'm scared that one day I'll wake up and realize I've wasted everything. I lifted my head to look at him. That's not going to happen. How do you know? Because you care too much. People who care don't waste their lives. They live them fully. He smiled and kissed the top of my head. Your turn. Tell me something. I took a deep breath. I'm scared that I'll wake up one day and you'll realize I'm not worth all this effort. That you'll leave like Archer did. Miles shifted so he could look at me directly. Caleb, listen to me. I'm not Archer. I'm not going to hurt you and I'm not going to leave. I know you're scared. I understand that. But I need you to try to believe me when I say you are worth it. You're worth everything. Tears pricked at my eyes. How can you be so sure? Because every day I spend with you, I discover something new that makes me fall harder. The way you laugh at terrible jokes. The way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. The way you care about people even when they've hurt you. You're extraordinary and I'm just lucky you're giving me a chance. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They spilled down my cheeks, but they weren't sad tears. They were relief, gratitude, hope. Miles wiped them away gently. Hey, it's okay. These are happy tears, I said, laughing through them. I promise. He pulled me close again and I buried my face in his chest. I think I'm falling in love with you, I whispered, so quietly I wasn't sure he heard. But he did. His arms tightened around me. I know I'm falling in love with you. We stayed like that for a long time, holding each other while the world continued outside. Eventually Miles spoke again. I want to take you somewhere tomorrow. Will you trust me? Where? It's a surprise. But I promise you'll like it. I agreed and we spent the rest of the night curled up together, talking about everything and nothing. Around midnight Miles reluctantly said he should go home and get some sleep. At the door he kissed me again, slower this time, sweeter. Good night, Caleb. Good night, Miles. After he left I touched my lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. My phone buzzed with a text from him. Already missing you. I smiled and typed back. Same. The next day Miles picked me up mid-morning. He drove us out of the city, refusing to tell me where we were going. After about an hour we pulled up to a beautiful botanical garden I'd never visited before. I thought we could spend the day here, he said. Just us. Away from everything. We spent hours walking through the gardens, surrounded by flowers and trees and the sound of water fountains. Miles held my hand the entire time, pointing out different plants, telling me stories about each section. It was peaceful and romantic and exactly what I needed. At one point, we found a secluded bench surrounded by roses. We sat down and Miles turned to me with a serious expression. I know this is happening fast, he said, and I know you're still healing. But I want you to know that I'm in this, Caleb. Completely. Whatever you need, however long it takes, I'm here. I felt my heart swell. I'm in this too. You've shown me what it means to be truly cared for. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. You won't, he promised. I'm not going anywhere. We kissed under the roses, and it felt like a scene from a movie, too perfect to be real. But it was real. This was my life now. This was my future. As the sun began to set, we made our way back to the car. On the drive home, Miles reached over and took my hand, bringing it to his lips. Thank you for today, I said. Thank you for giving me a chance. When we got back to my apartment, I didn't want the day to end. Stay tonight? I asked, just to sleep. I want you here. Are you sure? Completely. That night we lay in my bed, wrapped around each other. Miles's heartbeat was steady beneath my ear, and his fingers traced patterns on my back. Caleb? He whispered. I love you. My eyes flew open. What? He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at me. I love you. I know it's soon, but it's true. You don't have to say it back if you're not ready. I just needed you to know. I reached up and pulled him down for a kiss. When we broke apart, I said, I love you too. I really, really love you. His smile was blinding. He kissed me again, deeper this time, and I felt all the broken pieces of myself finally start to come together. Archer had left me bleeding. convinced I was worthless. But Miles had found me in that darkness and shown me light. He'd healed me not just physically but emotionally, spiritually. As I drifted off to sleep in his arms, I realized something profound. I'd spent 7 years trying to earn love from someone who was incapable of giving it. But real love didn't need to be earned. It was freely given by someone who saw your worth without you having to prove it. And Miles saw me. All of me. And he loved me anyway. That was everything.